Hi, it's me, Ingrid9FP, and I'm wearing a hat indoors because it's cold. It's the middle of November in Sweden, which isn't surprising that it's 3 degrees Celsius outside, but my radiator hasn't started. So thank God I live in Sweden where they have insulated windows and buildings. I grew up in France where the buildings are not insulated. We had French windows that had like cracks in the wood and one pane windows and condensation. And also it was a hoarder house, so my parents put a bunch of stuff in front of the radiators, so we couldn't put the radiators on because it was a fire hazard. So I'm used to wearing clothes, like a lot of clothes indoors during the winter. But thankfully I don't have to most of the time here in Sweden because we have such good heating and insulation. Why am I telling you this? I don't know. Anyway, I wanted to talk about autism and masking and how I didn't realize I was wearing a mask, that I was masking, that I am high masking, autistic. I'm not very good at masking, but I have masked a lot and I didn't know it. And it's only now that I know that I'm autistic that I have realized how much pressure I was putting on myself and that how much this mask was weighing on me and all the subtle ways in which everything that I do out in public is masking. So I work with patients, and that's where a lot of my relations with other people are, and everything is affected by autism and the mask. A lot of people compare it to having a stone in your shoe and not knowing that you've had a stone in the shoe the whole time. I would say it's more like having a mask. You thought that you had the same mask as everybody else, but you had actually an F92 mask while everybody else had just a regular surgical mask. And you thought, like, why am I having trouble breathing with this mask when everybody else is, has a surgical mask and is not having as much trouble breathing. Obviously flawed analogy, but it's what I could come up with. I realized that I have a hard time with eye contact. Even in my videos, if you've watched my videos, you'll notice I'm not very good at eye contact. I think better when I'm not having eye contact, but I know that I have to have eye contact in order to connect with people, in order for people to think that I'm listening to them, in order to be engaging, in order to make sure that the other person understands. Also, you're supposed to look at the other person in the face to gauge their facial expression and to help you understand their emotions through that, which I guess I haven't been really able to do. Like when I look at somebody in the face, I'm not really understanding what they are thinking. I think I've been pretty, I knew that I didn't understand how people perceived me, but it's only hitting me very hard now. I don't know how people perceive me. And I thought that's just because people aren't mind readers, I can't read other people's minds. But I realized that neurotypical people seem to understand by looking at somebody's face what they are thinking about them, and how they are being perceived. Well, for me, like, sure, I can notice that somebody looks upset or looks angry, but I'm not really understanding it in terms of, have I said something wrong? Is there something that I said, like, I can't regulate the conversation accordingly. And so I'd rather not know what people think of me, If there was a way to read into people's minds, I don't think that I would want to, sure, I want people to be honest, but at the same time, I don't think that I could handle it if I knew all of the awful things that people might think about me. And now knowing that I'm autistic, I'm starting to be worried about everybody else's opinion of me, because I guess that everybody has been realizing that I'm weird this whole time, and maybe said a bunch of shit about me behind my back that I didn't know about. And, you know, some people will be like, oh, well, that's just your negativity speaking. And it is kind of sounds like in CBT a negative automatic thought that, oh, everybody hates me. It's not that. It's not everybody hates me. It's that I know that I act in ways that are abnormal compared to the general population, and I cannot control it, and it is very scary, and people judge me based on that, and then they don't tell me, and then I think that we're on good terms when actually we are not. And this is real life experience. This is what happens. And I'm not just imagining that people are hating me just for the fact that I am me. This is a fact that a lot more people are going to dislike me compared to somebody that they are more used to the demeanor of, you know? Because I'm not doing it in the conventionally understood way of doing things, people are going to dislike me more. And that is very scary and difficult to handle. But I mean, I guess I've always known, but people have always said like, oh, don't worry, you know. But we have to accept the fact that some people are not going to like us. And also, there are certain things that are difficult for me. So the eye contact thing, I realize that it is difficult for me. Another thing is intonation. So I thought I was very good with eye contact, or not good. I thought I was mid with eye contact. I knew that I wasn't like great at it, but I wasn't like terrible at it. Now I know I'm pretty bad at it. Okay. I've managed to get through life, I guess, without having to deal with that too much. And that's because I live in Sweden, which, you know, not much eye contact in this country. And I've managed to get through my childhood in France without that much eye contact. But that's because I was a child. Now as an adult, I have to do a lot more relations with strangers, with authorities and all that. And so eye contact is much more important. But I moved to Sweden, and so I don't need to do that much eye contact. If I lived in the US, I would have to do a lot more eye contact than I do now in order to seem okay, like normal. Thing is, in Sweden, even though everybody's very monotone in like, or stoic in a way, the language is definitely not stoic. There's a lot of intonation in the way things are phrased. And I think that it's less of a thing in French, the country that I grew up in. I think in France, there's a lot more difference between hierarchy, and that is difficult for me in France. Figuring out the hierarchy between tu and vous and the different kinds of language in the hierarchical structure. I had a violin teacher for 8 years throughout my middle and high school life. And I never figured out if I was supposed to say tu or vous, and at what point could I move from vous to tu, because he was my teacher, so he was more experienced, so he should be vous. But at the same time, we've known each other for so long that we are kind of, you know, on speaking basis. So should I say tu? But at the same time, he is much older than me, so maybe I should say vous, you know. But at the same time, you know, we're talking about intimate things in our lives, so should I say tu? So I never figured that out. So that's a difficulty for French communication. And in Sweden, everybody is on the same level, which means that you are just as dramatic with everyone on the same level. And And by dramatic, I don't mean like outbursts of emotion, but the sonority of the words is going to be very much the same talking to a toddler as talking to your boss, as talking to an old person, as talking to your friend. It's very much everybody's the same, which corresponds to Swedish culture, but it is so weird, you know? So I don't need to worry about the tu and vous. I don't need to deal with that, but instead I have to exaggerate a lot of things that I say and have the right tone for each word in order for it to sound in the way that I want it to. And that is a little bit difficult, especially if you're autistic. And a lot of people, when they come to Sweden, they like being very dramatic in the way, like very exaggerated. But that's the way Swedish people speak. They are very exaggerated. And a lot of other people in the Nordics like to make fun of Sweden for being such a sing-songy, clear, extremely clear language. Just like Swedes like to make fun of Danish people for speaking very mumbly, like monotone voice. Sweden is kind of mocked for being extremely clear. And they'll be like, precis. Ja, nej men verkligen. Ja, vad säger du nu? Jaha. Ja. And then all of these certain Swedish. And so as an autistic person, I've been able to like manage these scripts of like, oh, this is what I say when I'm in a conversation with a patient and with a person and with a coworker. And so now I know, like, there was this Italian guy that I knew. He now still lives in Sweden, but when he first came to Sweden and he was learning Swedish, he would just manage to have a whole conversation in Swedish by saying ja, jaha, absolut, precis. And he would just, he said that he could get through an entire conversation in Swedish just by using those words. And it's funny. So that's just a cultural thing. I think that it's difficult as an autistic person to navigate subtleties. I like when things are clear. And I think that is where I can do these things. I can do these things and be clear. So I can do this. But it does take a lot of energy, you know? And I haven't learned to do the whole dramatic thing in French because I didn't really have to as a child. And so now I know that I'm not very good at communicating in French because I did not learn all those scripts of how to say certain things to certain people in certain ways. I haven't learned them, you know? And yeah, I know these certain scripts in English, but not when it comes to speaking with patients, because this isn't something that I've practiced, you know? It's difficult to speak. There are certain contexts where you speak certain languages and such. But yeah, so I'm not very good at tone and intonation. So I have to put a lot of energy into it. And this is something that I do every day at work, all the time. So I'm realizing that, wow, that is taking a lot of my energy. And then there's also, well, the fact that there are certain things that I don't do, which I maybe should do if I was going to be masking the whole way, which is like putting on makeup, dressing up in like presentable, nice clothes. I am I'm the kind of person who just sucks at fashion because I just want comfortable clothes, and I'll wear the same thing forever if it didn't fall apart, you know. And I don't want to wear clothes that are uncomfortable and makeup that's uncomfortable. And so, yeah, I seem like a weird person because of that. I also realized that when I speak to people, I say things before they have been able to process in my head. I think that this is more of an INFP thing than an autism thing. I think that TI is the function that makes you think a sentence out before you say it. But instead I have other functions. I don't have TI, and so I'm speaking, and as I'm speaking, I am tweaking the next word, and that is kind of one stone after another. I'm just following along. And I do that even when I'm having presentations. I am not structuring my sentences before they leave my mouth. And that seems like a very impulsive way to be, but that's the only way I've managed to talk. It's very spontaneous. And it's a very approximate way of navigating things. I realized like a lot of people don't like when people speak like me, because they think that is a sign that I am not very intelligent, you know, not being able to be articulate. And yeah, that really sucks. Another thing is my facial expression. I seem very nervous all the time. That's just something that I've heard people say about me. And I don't know which emotions show up on my face. Sometimes emotions show up, sometimes they don't. And sometimes I'll try to look like I'm smiling, but people see this as like a nervous smile, or maybe they think that I'm grimacing. I don't know. You know, this whole video seems like I'm overthinking it, but it's like, these are things that are important, you know? Maybe I look like I'm angry when I'm not. These are things that people have told me. Like they'll say like, oh, you look, insert word, expression, emotion. And then I'll be like, wait, no, that's not what I was feeling. That's not what I was thinking. I think that's a combination of being autistic and being INFP. You know, the emotions that don't line up with my insides, I guess. My outward expression doesn't align. And that kind of sucks. I mean, sometimes you don't want people to know what you're thinking inside, right? You don't want to be an open book. But at the same time, you don't want it to be the wrong expression. You know, sometimes I'm really happy and then like somebody's like, oh, you look tired, or oh, you look sad. And it's like, wait, no. I've been sitting here content this whole time. I don't know what you're talking about. And that has landed me in trouble. Also, I laugh a lot, which, you know, not very good if you're in a serious situation. Some people think that I'm laughing at them and rather than with them. Or, you know, I want to diffuse the tension, but they don't want me to. Or, you know, sometimes I'll be... people have told me, now several psychologists have written in my journal that I laugh at inappropriate moments and that I seem to be laughing to myself. That's just because I find myself so funny, right? Yes, I find myself funny. That's not the point, though, is that that's just how I am. I actually do feel happy laughing, you know, but a lot of people will think that I'm laughing out of nervosity, that I'm laughing because I want to feel a silence, or that I'm laughing because I'm insensitive or whatever. But that's not the case. I might be really, really engaged in making sure that you're feeling good and that I know that you're going through a terrible, terrible time. But sometimes I'll laugh because something funny happens, and then it's like I have to. And I've now met another doctor who also laughs as much as me, and it's so nice to meet somebody else who also has this problem, you know, because I can tell that sometimes the nurses will be like, he'll be laughing, and then they'll be like looking at him like, what? But they're used to him, you know, and now they know that this is the way that he expresses himself. And so that's the same for me. So there are all of these different factors, all of these different parts of the mask that I'm trying to unravel. So it seems like I'm struggling more than I was. But actually, this whole time I've been struggling. It's just that the reason for it hasn't been apparent. Now I can see it. And now I'm like, oh, so that has been taking my energy. The only problem is that all these things that are taking my energy, I can't avoid them. Because these are things that are important. I can't unmask in front of strangers or in front of coworkers people that are important for my livelihood. I can't unmask. So I need to find times where I can unmask. And so my therapist was saying, you know, maybe at work there's a certain corner where you can sit in quiet. I've found certain coworkers that I can unmask around. Like I might be able to like flap my hands a little bit, or like I usually do like a little bit of like piano kind of thing. Or I've realized also that I've been suppressing my stims. I didn't know that I had stims, okay? I was like, no, I don't have stims. Now I realize like I do like bounce on my toes a little bit, or I'll pick at my neck or that kind of thing. But now I realize that actually deep inside there is a kind of wants to kind of like shake my hands around, and it just feels nice doing it, you know. And I think that is discovering my stims. It's just that these stims have never been like safe to have. So I can't really do it in front of people. But when I am alone in the kitchen at work, I can try to do a little of them. Just like go a little bit like that, or like, you know, sometimes I do like this with my fingers a little bit. And I will bounce on the balls of my feet, and I might hum a little bit to myself. But I am always scared that somebody will come in and discover me in my natural state of being. And yeah, that is masking. That is masking the fact that I'm not able to do these things that make me feel sort of okay. So I just want to point out that masking isn't always that conscious. It's not always clear. It's not always something that is like voluntary. And sometimes it is a little bit confusing, because it seems like I am getting worse rather than better by getting an autism diagnosis. And it seems like, oh, now I'm struggling with so many more things, when actually these are things I've been struggling this whole time, but have seemed natural because I have perfected things over time. But in the end, this has always been the problem, and the point isn't in fixing the problem, it's in managing so that I can survive, use the mask when I need it, but to be able to take it off more often and in more situations, in order for me to not drain out of all of my energy, and to be able to use my brain to its a much bigger percent of its capacity. So yeah, tell me what you guys think. Have a great day.